Alright, I'm going to show you how to make a PNP50 useful for a mini quad. Okay, so when you get a PNP50, it'll come in a bag like this. You open it up, comes with this little 3-pin connector, and it will be wired like this. If you have an older one, some of the newer ones are actually wired differently. So essentially what you have here is a positive, one is an in and one is an out, and then you have a negative wire. The negative wire is running over, just straight across, and it works really well in most situations, but for a mini quad, this is not how we want to wire it. But you do still need a positive and positive going over the current sensor inside to get the correct current readings. So this is how we're going to do it. I've got one opened up right here. It's already out of its case, and here would be our out, and here would be our in, and then here's our center, which is the ground wire, and there's our current sensor. So what we're going to do is I'm going to desolder all of this, and including all of these other little mini solder joints right here with the 5-volt and 12-volt selection for your video transmitter and your cameras. And here's audio as well. You don't have to desolder that, but I like it to be really clean, and this is for a buddy of mine, so I'm going to do it right. You want your iron pretty hot, and I'll get my little solder buddy thing. Lock that down, and we'll just go ahead and desolder this. I'm pretty sure this current sensor isn't glued down, so if you get it too hot it might fall off. I've never had one fall off on me, so I don't know that for a fact, but I'm just guessing. Now this is solder wick. I'm going to actually suck all the solder off of these pads because I like to run my own solder, and it will make life a little easier later on. Again, I'm just cleaning the rosin off because it looks like crap. Okay, so to make this work on a mini quad, we need 14 gauge wire because 16 is too small. We're going to need 4 pieces. And we're going to have to run all 4 across here, which doesn't look like it'll fit. You need to trim the box if you're going to put it back in the box, but if you're not going to put it back in the box, then you can get away with it. So for the alien, I'm pretty sure we need about that much. So I don't know, 3 inches or so. So we'll cut, let's do 3.5 for one and 3 for the other. So again, I'm cutting, this is 14 gauge wire, and I am cutting 4 strands of it. 2 of them at 3.5 and 2 of them at 3. But it really comes down to the application. So, this is what you've got when you're done. You have, this is the side the XT60 goes on, this is the inside, and this is the outside which goes to your PDB. Again, that is what you have when you're done. And like I said, if you want to put it back in the box, you're going to have to trim the edges a tiny bit. But, and what I mean by trim the edges is the side that the wires go in, you're just going to take something like this, and you're going to just clip the edge right there and clip the edge right there, and it'll just break off, and the hole will be bigger and the wires will fit. So we are done with this. Just make sure everything is in there and there's no bridge connection. If you want, you can clean it again. If you're really anal, you can put a liquid electrical tape on there to make it a little less likely for something to cause a short, but I've never had a short go on before inside a PNP50, so I'm not going to be too worried about it. I used to do it all the time to make myself feel a little better about how close things are, but in reality you should just be able to take a multimeter, put it on diode check, and see if you got a short. If you don't, you're good to go, which I don't have a short. The only time it shorts is when I'm double negative or double positive. Everything else is good to go. I'll just drop in there, but it's not a short. This is sticky. I don't like it. Try not to rip one of the components off while cleaning it. That would be bad. Cool. Yeah, and if you really want to know the full alien build process, what I do is I run it like that. Gonna clip off the end. Going to strip a little here, strip a little there, twist to get the wires all nice and tight together. Run it in there like that. Get my iron. Tin the end. Tin the end. Got my XT60 here. I'm gonna grab a heat sink. If you've ever soldered an XT60 or any other connector for that matter, you'll know that if you heat them up too much, they melt. So what I do is I run a heat sink on the far side of it, which is essentially going to absorb some of the heat transferred to the connector from the soldering iron, and it will allow these pins to get hotter enough for the solder to melt on them, but not hot enough for the pins to melt. If you're quick about it, then it doesn't really matter either way. But just a little tip, and I will run some don't forget to put your heat shrink on before you solder anything down, and make sure when you solder it together do it to where the connector is actually in the right orientation. And your connector is clean. Your solder joints look very crisp. Your wire is bent to the correct angle. Pull your heat sink. Run your heat shrink over there, and I don't usually use a lighter. I usually run a heat gun, but that's a little too much for this. And I always slip the shrink inside there. Heat it up. Burn your little yellow XT60 because I hate them. And voila, good to go. Now on the other side, obviously, you're gonna strip and put onto the PDB. And I will slip a piece of clear heat shrink over the top of this, or black, whatever you want, and it will protect that. Now, the connectors, obviously, you got to figure out which one is camera and VTX. I know for a fact that the 4-pin on this side next to this microphone right here is your VTX wire. Just make sure that you have your pins pinned out correctly. So what I usually do is go to Google Images, type in PNP50, and if you scroll down to, like, I don't know, maybe to the 6th or 7th image, there's actually a picture of one sitting in this exact orientation, and it has the pins coming in with red, yellow, black, orange, or red, yellow, black, and white, which red is positive, obviously, negative is black, yellow is video, and white is audio. So you just want to make sure these things are pinned out correctly, because on here there is no indication of what is what. There's nothing on here that says pin 1 is ground, pin 5 is positive. It just doesn't do that. So you have to go and look at the physical color and decipher what is what. So the VTX is coming out here, and I run 12 volts because 5 volts is not enough to power most video transmitters unless you're running a 5 volt video transmitter. But in my case, I'm running an Immersion 600, so I'm going to run 12 volts because it is 2 to 6 cell, which is 8.4 volts all the way up to 23 or whatever 6 cell is. And then obviously your camera is going to come out here on this 4-pin, which is designed for some cameras that have a mic on them, so you have an audio coming in. But in my case, my camera does not have audio, so I'm going to run a 4-pin with 3 wires, or I'm going to run a 3-pin that will actually fit into the 4-pin. And I can show you that here. Here's a 3-pin Molex Pico Blade connector. It will plug into the 4-pin, and it's actually tighter than the 4-pin because the little dowel pluggy things don't line up correctly. But the downside to this is if you plug it in wrong, you could potentially damage your camera. So I recommend finding a 4-pin and actually pulling one of the wires out of it and just running 3 to the camera. But it comes with a 3-pin, and it's meant for the RSSI port, but a lot of people don't run RSSI, including myself, on these really simple mini quad builds. So yeah, I'll just run the 3-pin into the 4. If you want to be super anal about it, you can hot glue it, and I haven't never had one break. So yep, cool. So there were a lot of people asking to see the finished product of the Alien build, and this is it. I have flown it a couple times since then, and I mean, it's great flying aircraft. This is my backup, so obviously it's not going to be as dirty or as used as the one that I fly every day, but there were a lot of guys asking about the top plate and how I mount video transmitter as well. So I will take that apart and show you exactly how I'm doing that. I'm running wrap straps through the top to hold the video transmitter in place with the SMA flush against the top plate, and then I'm running a bunch of wrap straps on the back to keep the stress off of the SMA because the SMAs are notorious for breaking. And then as far as inside the quad, that is what it looks like. I hot glued my receiver wire, hard soldered my receiver, and put some clear shrink on it so I can still see if it's bound or not. And yeah, that is my 5-inch 8 lane.